Hello and welcome back to the channel. We have another Construct 3 tutorial ready for you today. In this video, we will be creating a HUD effect. If we collect these coins, the coin jumps to another layer and is able to fly directly up to our coin counting, which in most cases, this would be some kind of icon or other graphic, but we're playing it pretty simple today. But the idea is to show that we can move around anywhere in a level, no matter how big or small it is. And every time we collect a coin or an item, it flies in the same path up to our HUD. Just kind of gives it notification to the player that something is happening. And it's a cool little effect that you can put into a small project or anything that you might be working on already, or a game jam type of situation that would increase the aesthetic part of your game. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to create a new project. You can call this whatever you want. And these are the values, the viewport size, landscape, and everything is going to remain the same there. And I'm going to go ahead and create this project. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to run through what I have created. I'm going to try to speed through the setup so I don't take up too much time just setting up plain colored blocks, and we can get to the actual mechanic a lot faster. So let's take a look at what I've created. Over here in my project panels, you can see I have a coin, a ground, a keyboard, and player objects. Let's start with the ground. I made a 32 by 32 green block. These are the values for that if you want to follow along exactly with what I have. Once you create a square block, make sure that the collision box covers the whole sprite and that the origin point is in one of the corners. I went with the bottom left. And then you'll want to make sure that you name your sprite. Once you have created and named your sprite, in the properties panel for that green block, go to edit behaviors and add the solid behavior. Okay, the next object that I created was the coin object. And this is a 24 by 24 sprite. Color values, I just made a circle, a yellow circle with these values. I left the collision box to the square just because this is just a quick mechanic tutorial, and put the origin point directly in the center of the sprite. And of course, be sure that you are naming the sprite once you create it. And once you have created and named the coin sprite, come down to edit behaviors, and we want to add the tween behavior. This is how we will animate the coin from the spot where it is collected to the HUD. Okay. Up next is the player. For the player, I created a 24 for width and 48 for height sized sprite. The color I chose was blue, and I just filled the rectangle. Make sure that your collision box covers the whole sprite, and we need to put the origin point in the bottom middle. All right. Make sure you name it, and once you have created and named it, let's scroll down to the behaviors. And we want to add a platform behavior, and then we also want to add the scroll to behavior because we're going to need to be able to follow our player around the level. Okay, once you have the platform behavior added, let's change our max speed to 300, both acceleration and deceleration to 3000, our jump strength to 650, and gravity at 1500, max fall speed at 1000. And if you want to use the arrow keys to control your player, make sure that you have default controls clicked or ticked, but I do not like using the arrow keys, so I set up WASD. And if you want to do that, make sure that that is unchecked. And to give our player controls with WASD, we will need to come over here and you can right click on object types and add a new object type. And then you will scroll all the way down under input, and you should have a keyboard icon here. You will want to insert that, and when you do, it will appear here under your object types folder. And then we can go over to the event sheet. Here I have some very basic controls set up we have an A is down, and then for the action, we simulate the platform pressing left, and then when D is down, simulate pressing right, and when W is pressed, simulate pressing jump. You can find all those in your add events, and then you would go into the keyboard object, and you'll be able to find them here. Key is down, and then on key is pressed for the jump. And for the actions, you would just add an action, go into the player, scroll down, find simulate control, and then you'd be able to pick left, right, or jump. And after that, I put all three of these events into a group called controls, and now I can get it out of the way. Another thing you want to do is make sure that you are saving your project. You will hit this save icon, and if it's the first time you're saving the project, you will have to give it a name and make sure that you are putting it in a folder or on your desktop or somewhere where you know where it is and can get to it. And once you have saved, let's go back over to the layout and set up a couple of other things. If you click anywhere in a blank space on the layout, it'll bring up the layout properties. I have changed the size of the layout to 3000 by 720. 3000 for the width, 720 for the height. That will give us this long rectangle. Now, once you have done that, find your layers panel. I have mine over here. Take the first layer that you have in your project and rename it to game, and then right click and add layer to the top and name that one HUD. Once you have the HUD layer above the game layer, highlight the HUD layer, and over in the layer properties, come down to parallax and type in 0, 0. That will keep this layer from moving. The only thing that will be in this layer will be this dotted line, this viewport, this square. Anything on this layer within this square will stay in the position of wherever we put it. Okay, let's go back to our game layer, make sure it is highlighted, and then over in the layer properties, come down to background color, and I have mine at 56 across the board for the values. I changed that to a darker gray because the default gray is really hard on my eyes for some reason. I don't like it, so I just moved it down to be a little darker, and it gives us this darker background. Okay, once we have all of that set up, the next thing I did was I dragged out some copies of our ground object and resized them to be 32 pixels in height and 192 pixels in width. And then I just held down Control and dragged out copies to make ledges. And then, of course, I had this one long floor. And then I put two walls just outside the layout so that we don't see them, but we can't fly off of the edge because then we would just have to restart the game. I have set my grid size to 32 by 32 and I turned show grid on, and this is the layout that I came up with. Feel free to experiment and just set up a quick little level so that we have something to test our mechanic with. One thing you're going to want to make sure is that your player can reach these levels with the platform values that we've set. So if we go in and play it, I can still reach all these levels or these ledges. So play around with it, make sure that you can reach everything. And once you have set out a level, start dragging out copies of your coin object. You can select it, hold down Control, and drag out a copy. And I have a total of 21 coins in my level. So do whatever you want, but make sure that you have enough to test because we're going to want to look at things and see how it works as we move around in the level. Now that we have everything set up, go ahead and save. Make sure you're saving as often as you can think of. Now let's create a couple more objects. I am going to zoom into the top left portion of our layout. And then make sure that the HUD layer is highlighted, and then double click and scroll down, and let's insert a text object. I'm going to put mine up here in the left corner. Then we can scroll down in the properties, and I'm going to change the text so I can see what it's going to look like. We're actually going to change the text through code later on, but I'm going to type in coins, semicolon, space, and I don't know, I'll do like 25. All right, I'm going to keep Arial as the font. I'm going to change the size to 25, and I will have to drag out our box so it has room. And then I'm going to change the color to a solid white so we can see it. And then I'm going to leave all of the alignments how they are by default. And then if we play, now there's our text object. And if we move around, because the parallax of the HUD layer is 0, it does not move, it stays in place. And we can still move around on our game layer. Okay? So when we create the mechanic of these coins flying up to our HUD to animate that we have collected them, we need a reference point for the coins to animate to, and they will do that by using the tween behavior. So just to make it easy, I'm going to create an object and place it in the spot where I want the coins to end up. So I'm going to make this really easy. I'm going to go and click on the coin in the project panel, right click on it, and clone. And that gives us coin 2. I'm going to rename that coin HUD POS for position. And then double click on it to go into it. And I'm going to get the fill tool. And I'm just going to get like a reddish color. You can pick whatever color you want. So this still has all of the attributes of our coin object. Our origin point is right in the middle, which is what we need. And we can exit out of that and then drag a copy into our project on the HUD layer. So I'm going to turn the snapping off so I can move it around however I want. So the coin is going to go towards that origin point in the middle. I want that to be somewhere kind of in the middle of our numbers, but when we start the game, we're only going to have one number until we collect 10 or more coins, right? So I'm going to move it a little bit towards that first number. I think I am good with that. It really is a quick setup, but I know some of this stuff can kind of take time, but we need something to test our little mechanic out with. So create yourself a level and all these objects. And when you're done with that, again, make sure you're saving. And then let's go over to the event sheet and start setting up the code. So when we collect a coin, that would mean that the player has overlapped the coin. So let's set it up to where our player comes in contact with the coin and we can collect it. So add an event, grab our player, and let's scroll down to on collision with another object, and that is going to be the coin object. So once we have collided with the coin, the first thing that we're going to need to do is reposition the coin so that it can shoot up towards the HUD. So when we do collide with a coin, we will be on the game layer because our player is on the game layer and our coins are on the game layer. The only thing that's on the HUD layer is our text and this position marker. So we need to get the coin to the HUD layer so that it can shoot up to the position where our marker is on the HUD layer. So let's go ahead, come over here, add an action, and move that coin to the HUD layer. Go into the coin, and we can actually type in layer, and we want move to layer, and the layer is going to be the HUD layer. So in quotation marks, type in HUD, and that will move it to the HUD layer. So if we play this, when we collide with it, it shot down here, and now you can't see any of them. And that is because the ones we're collecting now are moving to the HUD layer, but they're moving to that layer in the exact position that they are in our game's world. I'll show you what I mean. So when let me turn this grid off. When we collected this coin, it shot down to the bottom part of the screen because on the HUD layer, this dotted line is the bottom of the screen. And that's why these two snap down to that location. And then when we collected these, they were on the HUD layer, but it was outside this box. It was outside our viewport. It was there, we just couldn't see it. So now when we collect a coin, we need to move it to the HUD layer, but we need to adjust for the position of where it is on the game layer in reference to where it is on the HUD layer. And to do that, we're going to use a built-in expression to construct 3 called canvas to layer. Now the documentation on it is very basic and doesn't really explain how it works or why it works the way it does, but I will lay this out in very simple terms and hopefully it will make sense. But as you can see, canvas to layer and then its coordinate, X or Y, and then we will have to plug in some values, which will require the layer name and then the X and Y coordinate. So it gets a little congested, but I will walk you through it. Once we have moved the coin to the HUD layer, let's add an action, grab our coin, and let's scroll down to set position. And for the X coordinate, we are going to use that canvas to layer expression. So type in canvas to layer X, and then put a beginning parentheses, and then it tells us we need a layer, an X, and a Y. So the layer is going to be where we're headed. So let's, in quotation marks, type in HUD, in quotation, and then separate that with a comma. And now we need the X value. Well, for the X value, we're going to use another expression called layer to canvas. So we went canvas to layer. Now we're going to go layer to canvas. This is the same as the canvas to layer. We will need a layer, an X, and a Y. Let's type in layer to canvas X, and then it will need parentheses as well. And it also needs a layer and X and Y coordinates. So the layer here is going to be from the game layer. So quotation mark, game, end quote, separate that with a comma. And now it needs an X and Y value, which we will get from the coin object. So coin.x, comma, coin.y, and then end parentheses. So this is the X value that canvas to layer X is requiring. So we have the layer, then the X value. Now we need the Y value. So let's put a comma on the end of that to separate it. And we're going to use the layer to canvas Y for the Y value. So layer to canvas Y, and then we'll need another set of parentheses here. And again, it asks for a layer, an X, and a Y. And that layer is going to be the game layer in quotation marks, separated by a comma. And then let's grab the coin.x, comma, coin.y, and then end parentheses. So now we have our expression, canvas to layer X, and then in parentheses, we have the layer separated with a comma, the X value separated with a comma, and the Y value. So now we just need to add the parentheses that we started this expression with. So at the very end, add one more parentheses, and it is complete. This Y value is going to be the exact same thing that we wrote up here. It's just going to be the Y value of that. So we can highlight this entire block of code, Control C to copy, come down here, Control V to paste, and the only thing we need to change is this expression of canvas to layer X, change that to a Y, and everything else stays the same because we are grabbing the same coordinates from the same objects from the same layers. Okay, let's hit done. And if we play that, now when we collect a coin, it looks like it's sticking to our player, kind of. But it's not really. Because if I just hover my mouse over one of the coins, no matter where we move or where the screen moves, it stays wherever we collected it from. So they aren't really moving. It's just when we collect them, they jump to the HUD layer in that exact position. Now we can animate them now that we have them on the HUD layer. So let's add an action below that and go into our coin object, and we added the tween behavior in the beginning. So let's scroll all the way down, and we're going to need the X and Y value of where it is going. So we need to go down to tween to properties, and we'll need a tag because we're going to have to reference this tween after it is done. So I'm just going to say coin HUD and make sure it's in between quotations. The property is position, so that gives us an end value of X and an end value of Y, and that value is going to be that marker that we made, the coin HUD POS. So let's type that in, coin HUD POS.x, and for the Y will be the coin HUD position.y. And for the time, I want mine to happen pretty quick, definitely not 5 seconds, so I'm going to go 0.3. You can play around with yours to see if something else fits. I'm going to leave everything else as default. Okay, hit done. And now if we play, every time we collect a coin, it jumps to the HUD layer and shoots up to that position. Okay? Okay, now that we have the mechanic down, we can decide what to do once the coin has reached our text object, our HUD element. So to understand when the right time is for the coin to disappear, because we don't want it covering the text like it was when we tested it. See, it's shooting up there, but it doesn't know what to do after that. So we need to get rid of the coin, and we want to update our text to count how many coins we have. So over here in our event sheet, let's add an event, and I want to make sure that the coin animates to the top and reaches its destination before we do anything with it. So we can do this by determining when the tween has finished. So go into coin and scroll down to the tween behavior and on finished. And this is where we need to reference that coin HUD tag that we made. So in between quotation marks, type in our coin HUD or whatever you name the tag, but it has to be exactly how you typed it in up here. Okay, hit done. When it is finished, then we can get rid of that coin. So add an action, get our coin, destroy. So now our coin is no longer there once it reaches its destination. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that red dot too. This is just our marker. So if you click on it and scroll down in its properties, we have this initially visible. We can untick that, and we actually cloned it, so we have this tween behavior on it too. We don't need that. I'm going to go into edit behaviors, highlight that tween, and delete. Okay, so now when we play, that red dot's not there anymore. Our marker is gone. And there is our coin to HUD animation. Okay, let's go ahead and save while we're thinking about it. So over here on our event sheet, once our tween is finished and we destroy the coin, we want to update that text counter. And to do that, we're going to keep track of how many coins we've collected with a variable so that our coin counter can just feed off of that. So let's put that in our player object. Click on the player and come over to the properties, and let's edit instance variables and add a new instance variable. And I'm going to call this coins collected. And it'll be a number. And now we can go add another action after our tween has finished. Grab our player, scroll down to instance variables, add 2, coins collected, 1. So now that our variable is changing every time we collect a coin, we can update our text. So let's go to add event and go into system and type in every tick. So every frame of the game is going to update the text to read whatever we want it to read. So let's add an action, get our text object, and I'm going to type in set text. And we want to set it to read coins, semicolon, space, in between quotation marks. And then the ampersand, and then we can get that variable from our player object. So type in player dot and the name of that variable, which is coins collected. Okay, now let's play. And you see our variable starts out at 0, so it's reading coins is 0. And when we collect one, and you see it waits until it animates up there, and it's like the coin hits that object and makes it change. So there we go. Okay. Nice. Okay, so that is the mechanic. This block of code right here tells us to change the position of our coin from the game layer to the HUD layer in reference to our viewport. That is the mechanic. I'm just going to add one more little thing here, add a little bit of flair. I'm going to double click off to the side over here, and I'm going to grab a particles and insert it. And I'm going to change this to 20 by 20 for the size. And I'm going to get a yellow color, grab my circle tool, zoom in here, start in the top left, go down to the top or the bottom right, and then we can just fill that in. Maybe a little brighter. Okay, that'll work. Now with that selected, we can come down here in the properties, and let's change the rate to 12. the spray cone to 360, continuous spray to 1 shot, and let's change the speed to 60. The size, I'm going to change, let's go 15. Fade to invisible, and I want it to be pretty quick, so 0.4. We got kind of like, it's almost like an explosion. So if we go to grow rate and say -25, we can go -30. I kind of like that better. Maybe bump the speed up to 70. Oh, speed randomizer. Let's change that to 0. There we go. That's a little bit more like what I want. Okay, let's go over to the event sheet and let's go in here to our on collision with coin and add an action and go to our coin object. And we want to spawn another object, and that's going to be the particles. And the layer is going to be the game layer. And the image point will be 0. And we want this to spawn before our coin moves to the HUD layer. So let's drag this up to the top. So that's the first thing that happens. Then we start changing layers and positions. And then down here, once the tween is finished, we can give it another little spark on the text object. So let's add an action and grab our marker that we made, the coin HUD POS, and spawn another object. That will be the particles. The layer will, this time, it's going to be the HUD and image point 0. Let's play that. There we go. And we got just a little more effect and flair to the project. Okay, very simple. Something that can be implemented into any type of game that has collectibles, especially if you're doing something like a game jam in a time constraint. Adding something simple like this can really change what the player sees and feels while playing the game. That is it. I hope this helps some of you out. Make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. I have quite a few more of these little mechanics coming, plus something else that will be announced on this channel soon. Some other projects that I have been working on. So be sure you are subscribed so you don't miss any of that. Hit that thumbs up while you're here. Make sure you are saving your project. And I hope everybody stays safe, and I will see you in the next video.